I think it is actually important to recognise that one of the issues that Menkit has called for, which is concerted action to open up a whole range of services sectors from ICT, logistics, transport, e-payments, computer services. This is precisely the set of sectors that John Drummond's work to measure the extent of regulation and the extent of opening up has identified are in need of more effort. And I think it's some of that work presented by the OECD has also shown us actually that Thailand, in the big effort it's made, as Priyu Prey described, to make it, to free up and facilitate the supply of services, has been through domestic reform, including they really have brought their digital services trade restrictiveness index down. So the way I think we'll do this, I absolutely do have to shortcut for time. And so I think I'm really, the best way to do this is to ask first John whether he would like to leave any further additional message, anything he wants to emphasize in what he has said, and then another bite at the cherry from Menkit, any further thing he would wish to emphasize, and then I have a question for Priyu Prey with which I'll end this session. So John, do you have any particular additional thing you would like to stress?
Thanks, Jane, and just some concluding remarks. So I started by saying how coming to APEC discussions is always invigorating, because I think this community and the people involved in this discussion get the importance of services. But then Vangelis kind of told us about how APEC was losing a bit its edge overall. And what my message to leave with you is that in the services competitiveness roadmap, in the work that you're doing, you have the tools and the capacity to regain that edge, to organize APEC economies for the 21st century, and so many common goals and objectives in the APEC way of working together and advancing these things thoughtfully and strategically. So the joint initiative on domestic regulation, some of the tools that are in your roadmap are at your disposal. And I think the strengthened evidence base that you have can help to focus minds from a political perspective to make sure that you capitalize on benefits that services trade holds for citizens of all APEC economies. Thanks, Jane.
Well, thank you very much, John. And Menkit, would you like to, is there something you want to say?
Yeah, just one point. It's on APEC's implementation of services. Right now, the competitiveness roadmap is cross fora. It doesn't have a lot of visibility, you know. So I thought if we can build in the services competitiveness into the Putrajaya vision document, I think there's a lot more visibility. Then there's top of mind. You need to get there. So that's my suggestion, because right now it's sort of a little bit under the radar, but we know how important services is.
Thank you. What I'm going to do is effectively give the last word to Priyu Prey. Madam, you have about 2 minutes to respond to Menkit's outline of ABAC's business recommendations to APEC, and in particular, how you see the APEC Services Competitiveness Roadmap going forward as Thailand takes the chair for APEC 2022. And finally, because you're a services negotiator, and because in the last panel, Debbie Elms put a lot of data up on slides across many different recent agreements in the region, and she mentioned RCEP amongst them. And I just want to give you the opportunity, if you want to come back in on what we do in APEC about this sort of proliferation of FTAs that are out there dealing with these issues, and how we're going to handle all of that through the competitiveness roadmap. Thank you.
Thank you, Jane. Thank you, Mr. May, for the presentations. As the host for APEC next year, Thailand is pleased to carry on with the initiative, and we would like to see the roadmap being reviewed and adjusted to better reflect the current state of play of the trading services, and also the challenges that we probably see, hope less and not more. And just to make sure that the roadmap continues to provide a strong framework for the development of services sector in the APEC region. With respect to the work of the ASER, I think we echo, most of the recommendations as Mr. Main just mentions, we should push forward unfinished business, like final push for services, removing the barriers of trades, particularly the area of the MSMEs participations, strengthen the abilities of the business towards mode 1, like cross-border services, and support accelerations of the digitalizations and services service certifications, and of course regulatory reforms to the domestic regulations. And I think it's also part of the APEC efforts to encourage APEC economies to join the JSI or the JI initiative under WTO, which is the JSI e-commerce and the JI for domestic regulations. I think the more participations, the more participants, the better. And with respect to what Deborah mentions, as James highly mentions earlier about the cross-cutting internationalization, so the e-commerce rules. And also in case of Thailand, we mentioned about the strategies and the reforms and the laws and the establishments of the legal frameworks in the countries. I would like to say that, as Jane mentioned earlier, it's very important to stick to the international baseline. For example, like the legal frameworks, you should looking at ancestral, for the electronic transactions, and also Thailand's also engaged like other ASEAN members. I think we engage in the ASEAN, we engage in APEC, we engage in FTA, we have ASEAN +1, like Deborah mentions, ASEAN New Zealand, and we also have RCEP. All these, we have the e-commerce chapter, we have the rules, but again, with those rules in the binding agreements, it's come to the enforcement of those rules. So it's mean that you need the readiness of the legal frameworks in the domestic is very important. And that domestic legal framework should be consistent with the international standards. And I think there's an APEC effort on these matters. It can be streamlined, domestic, regionals, multilaterals, initiative all together. That's APEC could contribute, and it's very important to have the initiative, the public-private dialogue more on this initiative. Thank you.
Well, that was a good point to end on. I couldn't agree more with that, because we simply cannot finish our agenda in the time frame we have. It's 1:30 in the morning for me. But the three of you have well and truly kept me awake. So thank you very much, Prue Prey, Chumron, John Drummond, and Ho Meng Kit. It was an excellent discussion, and thank you very, very much. And good luck for next year.